Wow, okay, well, huge crowd here, guys. Good morning, CPAC. Everybody obviously pretty excited for President Trump later today. So this topic is particularly important. Part of if you haven't been paying attention for the past few years, you've probably missed that the deep state, the media, the left, globalist forces have been trying to take out President Trump. They came after him in every single possible way that they possibly could have. What we're zoning in on here on this panel is just one of the origins of those lines of attack against the president. What we want to do is really kind of zone in on and expose what the Ukrainian interference in the 2016 election. Everybody, if you turn on any of the establishment media, and I don't recommend watching CNN or MSNBC, but if you do, all you're going to hear is Russia, Russia, Russia. That's all they talked about for the past 3 years. That being said, we did see another country engage in interference in the election in 2016. That was the Ukrainians. They came after President Trump, then candidate Trump. They had their ambassador writing op-eds against him. They had other senior officials, their interior minister, attacking him aggressively. So this is a story that the establishment media doesn't tell. I guess we'll start with the congressman. Congressman Hice, so you saw this play out in the hearings, in the investigations against President Trump. You're on the Oversight Committee, so you were there for a lot of these briefings. What are some of the things that you saw about Ukraine and their efforts to interfere in the 2016 election on behalf of Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and thanks to each of you for all that you do to stand for our conservative principles. It's great to be here with you. But yeah, as it relates to Ukraine, there is absolutely no question in the world. You talk about collusion, which the president has been charged with all of this. The real collusion, unquestionably, took place. There was collusion. There was a collaborative effort to interfere with the elections of 2016, but that collusion involved the Obama administration, the Clinton campaign, and Ukraine. I mean, those were the centerpiece. That was the epicenter of it, and the individual that surrounded all of it was Paul Manafort. And it is absolutely stunning to me, as more information has come out, just how severe, how purposeful, how collaborative this attempt was to interfere with our elections, but it came from within our own nation and individuals here who need to face the consequences for doing so.
And so, Chris, as a radio host and you guys at WMAL, us at Breitbart, we're some of the few places out there that actually report the truth. That being said, a lot of the rest of the media doesn't like to talk about this. They blacked it out during the whole impeachment thing. Tell us your thoughts on that.
Well, it's not the only thing they've blacked out for the last several years. You were talking about if you've missed the news for the last 3 years. Maybe you missed the fact that Hillary Clinton's still not president. Every morning when I wake up, instead of coffee, I just think about Hillary Clinton waking up knowing that she's not president for another day. As she watches President Trump fly off on Marine One from the South Lawn, knowing that she's never going to do that again either. Isn't it wonderful? It's one of the stories that and honestly, it's not unfair to call it a cover-up. They cover up the indiscretions of the Democrat Party quite regularly. It's been a habit going back certainly to the Kennedy administration, possibly go back to FDR while he was throwing Japanese Americans into internment camps. They were covering up the fact that he was in a wheelchair. Literally, John F. Kennedy's famous and notorious indiscretions, they covered up quite gleefully. The editor at the Washington Post, the publisher of the Washington Post, were in on it. They went to parties with him in McNamara and Vietnam, and they covered this stuff up. I mean, honestly, McNamara and the Washington Post and Vietnam was a pretty good example of a corrupt media covering up big things for the Democrats. When it comes to Ukraine and the focus, the sort of laser-like focus on Russia and Putin. And I mean, this is a fiction conjured up by the DNC and the Democratic Party, fed to their allies in the news media at the New York Times, the Washington Post, and beyond. They really stick to it. They stick to it like nobody's business. You remember President Trump doing an interview with Leslie Stahl on 60 Minutes some number of months ago, and she was asking about Russian interference and Russian interference, Russian interference. And he said, well, yeah, there were other countries too, and I believe he mentioned Ukraine and China. And she jumped in and said, why do you insist on doing that? Why do you insist on bringing other countries into it? Russia, and her laser-like focus is the party's laser-like focus. It's on Russia. And they do this, of course, to the exclusion, this is the party-issued talking points, to the exclusion of all other news. I mean, I love the fact that Hunter Biden, you see this yesterday? The New York Times had a big profile piece yesterday. Did you see this? The headline is, there's a new artist in town, and his name is Biden. And there's a picture of Hunter Biden looking relaxed in a study with books behind him. And it's a glowing profile of the art of Hunter Biden, who's just been ordered to appear in court in Arkansas next week for one of the baby mamas. This is the stripper from Washington, D.C., and he knocked her up, and he's being, and that's
not to mention all of his other problems.
Not to mention all of his many other, and the $83,300 a month no-show job with a Ukrainian gas and oil company. I'm an oil and gas man, and his explanation why he gets an $83,000 a month job with a Ukrainian gas company is not because his father is the vice president, who's the administration's point man on Ukraine. No, it's because he was the vice chairman of the board of Amtrak. Now, his experience in the railroad industry is riding the train with his dad and running up and down the aisle annoying people. But he became the vice chairman of Amtrak, and that became his qualifier for being on the board of a Ukrainian gas company. And the news media looks at it and says, you raise an alarm. They say, well, that's a debunked conspiracy theory. And they accuse you of being some sort of a fringe nut for pointing out that the casual corruption of the ruling class continues unabated. I do go on, don't I? Please.
Yeah, so Congressman, why is it that the media, the left, the establishment, so on and so forth, first of all, why do they not tell the truth about this? By the way, in case anybody has any questions, we've got proof right here. We've got the op-ed. We've got all the different things that the Ukrainians did printed out. So if anybody in the establishment media would like to come find me later and challenge us on this, we at Breitbart actually do our homework. You guys don't. But but Congressman, so why is it that they're so dead set on trying to take down President Trump? Put this in context.
Yeah, he was never supposed to win. This was Hillary Clinton's deal from the beginning. Listen, you go back 2015. June, Donald Trump announces his candidacy. Very few people really took that seriously at that time. Probably everybody in here did, but most of the country did not take him seriously. And then 4 years ago, in fact, today, he wins the New Hampshire primary. He wins the South Carolina primary. He wins the Nevada caucus. He starts surging one primary after another, steamrolls into the Republican convention, comes out with the nomination, and the Democrats on the other side was a fight between Hillary and Bernie. She sabotages that. She comes out with the nomination, and she is absolutely confident that she's going to beat Trump, who she believes, and the Democrats believed we were all crazy for nominating. They underestimated Donald Trump's power. They underestimated the canny connection that he had with the American people, the lost American people who feel like they've lost their way in Washington, and the people soared around Donald Trump to totally blindside the Democrat Party. And they hate him. They've been out to get him from that point.
So now, Chris, one of the other things that's really interesting through this whole Ukraine interference in the 2016 election is, and this is a tactic we've seen the media and all of President Trump's opponents, they've honed and perfected over the course of 3 years, where they go after people who work for them. So the Ukrainians actually went after Paul Manafort, and the famous Black Ledger. Everybody go out there and look that up. But this tactic was the first time that we started seeing them targeting staff for the now President of the United States during the campaign.
Well, also, little did we know, they already had an operation underway targeting George Papadopoulos, who was being invited to Europe mysteriously and being introduced to people that were involved with the FBI and the CIA, the Stefan Halpers, and there's a long list of names. Who is Azra Turk? I'd still like to know who this woman Azra Turk is. And no one can answer that question. And that's another thing the news media just sort of brushes off and says, well, there's nothing to see there. No, there's a great deal to see there. In fact, what we know now is that the FBI under James Comey, and Loretta Lynch's name is still left out of this quite remarkably, and John Brennan, who is a rogue, a radical, who literally voted for the Communist Party candidate for the presidency of the United States, Gus Hall, when he was a young man. And this guy is obviously a frothy, both of them, obviously frothy anti-Trumpers. We learned much later, only because, I mean, again, Hillary was supposed to win. President Trump was not supposed to win. And no one would have been wise to any of this if Hillary had won. They would have been completely successful in pulling this thing off. They're getting warrants, illegal, we now know, warrants to spy on a Naval Academy grad named Carter Page. George Papadopoulos had done nothing wrong, and they're ambushing him, setting him up. We know that they altered a document coming from the CIA saying that Carter Page was, in fact, working as an asset, feeding information to the CIA from his Russian sources. And the FBI scrubbed that and fed this disinformation, an altered document, to the FISA court, along with the phony baloney dossier, which is a political document, from our political system into our legal system, again, assuming that Hillary's going to win and no one will ever be the wiser. We've seen abuses of the FBI, the CIA, the FISA courts, the Justice Department, and I don't think that we've gotten to the bottom of all of that yet.
Well, let me just jump in here.
And the news media, I'm sorry, the news media thinks none of that is newsworthy.
Yeah, and another one of the individuals that's right in the center of all this is Ukrainian-American lady, Chalupa.
Right.
Alexandra
Chalupa.
She is at the DNC, which is funded, of course, bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton.
Right.
But she is kind of the center between Ukraine and the United States. And she connects a couple of key people over here to our government over here. And these folks have ties to the Ukrainian government, to funding the Clinton Foundation, to Fusion GPS, to all this stuff. And she gets them to come over to the United States. And the Obama administration grants them meetings with the FBI, all our departments, National Security Council, all these things. They have frequent meetings. Chalupa met 27 times in the White House during all this time.
And she was also at the Ukrainian embassy.
And she's a Ukrainian American with
absolutely.
Right. So Congressman, let me ask you this: how do we get to the bottom of this? Because Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler, Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, bad guys, right? Yeah, come on, guys, boo, right? Like, okay, so Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler are never going to call Andrea Chalupa as a witness. They resisted it throughout the entire impeachment process. Did the Republicans take the House back in November? And then you guys call her in as a witness?
Yeah. That's what's got to happen. You know, we have some more investigations that are taking place. We'll see how this all comes out with the Durham investigation, so forth. But yeah, we've got to take the House back. I was in those depositions, being a part of the Oversight Committee, front and center. You have never in your life seen anything more unfair. We were not allowed a witness. The president was not allowed to defend himself. 17 witnesses in all, every one of them handpicked by Adam Schiff. He was the counsel. He was the prosecutor. He was everything in these meetings, and then leaked information that would be damaging to the president. I was shocked. I was fearful for our country to see how this was railroaded on the American people, all for the purpose of destroying a sitting, duly elected president.
It's absolutely unbelievable.
And a great moment on CNN there have been many by my metric, over the course of the last year or so, the hearings on Ukraine, and which didn't work out very well for Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, but still they get a free pass. After one of the hearings where they were talking about Fusion GPS, which you mentioned, and Joseph Mifsud, the Maltese mystery man, they came back to the panel at the Lucite desk, a bunch of clueless people at CNN, And David Gergen, there's like, what are these people talking about? This fusion GPS and this Joseph Mifsud. They have not heard any of these words. And David Gergen had to say, well, these are things we don't talk about much around here. And that was the end of it. That was like, oh, okay. So
we know the establishment media doesn't cover stories.
They don't
want
follow
to.
the news.
They won't do it. They don't.
I say this all the time. One of the amazing things about the mainstream news media is they don't follow the news. Ask an anchorman about the news of the day. They don't know. Ask them about their hair. They'll go on all day.
All right, guys. Excellent panel. Great discussion here. Guys, this is my 10th CPAC, so I'm really excited to be up here. Thank you, guys, and we'll look forward to President Trump later today. So.
Thank you all.
Thanks.